As always, I'm fucking late to the party, but here we go. It's currently 11:55 p.m. and I should be doing anything but that. But today, we're doing a Twilight breakdown, because that's what I do. We're gonna start with a quick breakdown of how absurd the Twilight timeline is, and truthfully, this entire story is insane, has insane pacing. Till this day, I cannot make peace with it. Like, Stephanie Meyer, get a grip. The Twilight book takes place in like 5 months. Bella moves to Forks on 17th of January 2005, and by the time they go to the prom, spoiler alert, at the very end of this book, Bella and Edward go to the prom together. It's in May of 2005. Keep in mind, for most of this time, Edward is actively ignoring Bella. I'm gonna give you all a little warning. I dislike the Cullens. It's loathing, truly. Yes, I so wicked.
Loathing, unadulterated loathing.
In my opinion, the Cullens are a bunch of creepy human cosplayers, and no one can convince me otherwise. This entire Edward and Bella relationship, it's a curse. It's a curse, it haunts me. But I love Twilight. Like, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it. I read this book like 3 times in past, like, 5 days? But anyway, girl, grab yourself a cup of tea, a huge one, and a snack, because we have a very long way to go today. In the first chapter, Bella moves to Forks, and that's how we get introduced to her and her Dylan. But before we meet Charlie, Bella gives us a glimpse of her life in Phoenix. I loved Phoenix. I loved the sun and the blistering heat. I loved the vigorous, sprawling city. I cannot believe that this girl who adores sun, heat, everything Phoenix, everything Arizona, could ever find herself in love with an ice-cold creature. I'm sorry, it's just not possible. Then Bella tells us a little bit about her mom. My mom looks like me, except with short hair and laugh lines. I felt a spasm of panic as I stared at her wide, childlike eyes. How could I leave my loving, erratic, harebrained mother to fend for herself? That means we still don't know how neither Bella or her mom look. But we know that Bella is terrified that her mother won't be able to fend for herself. How traumatized is this girl? Her and Charlie have some awkward conversation in the car on the way home, and we learn that Charlie bought Bella a car. Bella continues to be melodramatic, stares out of the window through this entire ride home. We get a very, very specific description of the trees and this banger of a line. It was too green. An alien planet. What does this mean? Is she aware that we have pretty green covered states? Bella continues about her day, dwelling, but trying not to, on her terrible situation, and then she goes to sleep. The next day, still the same chapter, is Bella's first day of school. Before going to class, she almost has a panic attack. She hyperventilates. Once I got around the cafeteria, building 3 was easy to spot. A large black tree was painted on a white square on the east corner. Why do we need this description? Like, this entire sentence is not necessary at all. I felt my breathing gradually creeping toward hyperventilation as I approached the door. I tried holding my breath as I followed 2 unisex raincoats. Is she a vampire already? Why does she need to hold her breath? This girl needs therapy desperately. We learn that she's so special. Bella Swan is so special that even the teachers are gawking at her. I have no idea how to pronounce this word, which, by the way, I find it highly unprofessional for a teacher to gawk at the student. Also, Bella is not like the other girls. She likes to read. I kept my eyes down on the reading list the teacher had given me. It was fairly basic. Bronte, Shakespeare, Chaucer, or however he is pronounced, Faulkner. I'd already read everything. That was comforting. And boring. As the day goes on, Bella keeps being internally mean and judgmental to everyone around her. Jessica introduces Bella to her friends, and apparently it is very uncommon for people of forks to talk to other people. We sat at the end of a full table with several of her friends who she introduced to me. Why can I read? I forgot all their names as soon as she spoke them. They seemed impressed by her bravery in speaking to me. Bravery? What is this town? What are these people? At lunch, Bella finally sees the Cullens. To say she is stunned would be an understatement. Personally, I read this book, as I said, 3 times at least for the past few days. Bella has a crush on Rosalie Hale. No one can convince me otherwise. Also, it wouldn't be uncalled for. Rosalie is stunning. They didn't look anything alike. Of the 3 boys, one was big, muscled like a serious weightlifter with dark curly hair. Another was taller, leaner, but still muscular and honey blonde. The last was lanky, less bulky, with untidy bronze-colored hair. Keep in mind that description of Edward, okay? He was more boyish than the others, who looked like they could be in college, or even teachers, here rather than students. The girls were opposites. She had a beautiful figure, the kind you saw on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, the kind that made every girl around her take a hit on her self-esteem just by being in the same room. This is Rosalie. Her hair was golden, gently waving to the middle of her back. The short girl was pixie-like. Her hair was a deep black, cropped short and pointing in every direction. I read somewhere that Elise looked like a 14-year-old, like a child. The Cullens kind of behaved like weirdos, and how no one ever noticed that before. They were all looking away from each other, away from the other students, away from anything in particular as far as I could tell. What are you doing? Then we have a little exposition, thanks to Miss Jessica. That's Edward and Emma Cullen, and Rosalie and Jasper Hale. The one who left was Elise Cullen. They all lived together with Dr. Cullen and his wife. So, the kids were adopted by Carly and Esme, and Esme is a biological aunt of Jasper and Rosalie. I don't see why. Like, they look nothing alike. Also, isn't she like too young? They like 18. And Esme, as far as I can tell, she's 26. That makes no sense. The Cullens moved to Forks 2 years prior from Alaska. I would like to stop here for a second because I have a couple of questions. How the hell no one, not even one person, investigate this whole weird incest relationship in this family? I understand that they are not related still. And the question that keeps popping up everywhere, why were the Cullens still in high school? Why wouldn't they go to college? Just drop this.
Why he wants to go to high school is beyond me.
Edward started as a junior? No, they're junior now. As a freshman. As a 15-year-old. You cannot convince me that Edward looks like a 15-year-old. Bella has a brief staring contest with Edward. I'm sorry, this is actually hilarious. As I examined them, the youngest, one of the Cullens, looked up and met my gaze. As I looked swiftly away, it seems to me that his glance held some kind of unmet expectation. What did he expect of her? What is happening? We move to the famous scene. To the biology lesson. I'm a strong believer, personally, that this whole only one available seat in the classroom was the beginning of our obsession with only one bed trope. Change my mind. Edward is being a creep, and Bella wonders if she stinks. Just as I passed, he suddenly went rigid in his seat. He stared at me again, meeting my eyes with strangest expression on his face. I have to admit, I actually forgot how intense Stephanie's writing is. It actually makes me uncomfortable. Why is everything so intense? No one, my friends, family, anyone, is so intense all the time. We would go insane if we had this range of emotions all the time at like every hour. Bella instantly becomes obsessed with Edward. She cannot stop thinking about his strange behavior. Little does she know that something worse than a murderous 17-year-old is waiting for her. It's a PE lesson. At home, only 2 years of PE, where it states only 2 years of RE. What's RE? We don't know. Here, PE was mandatory all 4 years. Forks was literally my personal hell on earth. And she felt nauseous because of playing volleyball. Relatable. She is so dramatic. Nothing else but this PE hatred. I find it kind of fitting for a 17-year-old. Like, I cannot blame her for this. Hello, Priscilla. Hello. Edward and Bella meet one more time when he is desperately trying to change classes / plotting Bella's unaliving. Edward Cullen's back stiffened and he turned slowly to glare at me. His face was absurdly handsome, with piercing, hate-filled arms? Yes, his arms were hate-filled. For an instant, I felt a thrill of genuine fear, raising the hair on my arms. The look only lasted a second, but it chilled me more than the freezing wind. Oh yes, I love when people I meet have hate-filled eyes. Nothing like a spark of loathing to start an amazing relationship, Bella. Eventually, she goes home, cries about Edward hating her, so all is back to normal. The nature is healing. We start chapter 2. The next day was better and worse. So it's day 3 of Bella's adventure in Forks, and her day starts terrible for a number of reasons actually. It was miserable because I had to play volleyball. And the one time I didn't cringe out of the way of the ball, I hit my teammate in the head with it. And was worse because Edward Cullen wasn't at school at all. She continues to be miserable through the day, but her attention is briefly turned from Edward when she notices that she would have to do something about Mike, because apparently him talking to her means that he is into her, because every boy in the school is obsessed with Bella Swan. Shocker. Her thoughts quickly come back to the original course because she has this nagging suspicion that she was the reason Edward Cullen wasn't at school. She is actually aware that it's unreasonable and quite impossible. Even if after reading Midnight Sun, we know that it's exactly the reason he's not at school, but hello, Priscilla. Later we have some description of the Cullens alongside Bella's commentary. It seemed exquisite for them to have both looks and money, but as far as I could tell, life worked that way most of the time. It didn't look as if it bought them any acceptance here. And then she says something that actually almost made me cry. No, I didn't fully believe that. Isolation must be their desire. I couldn't imagine any door that wouldn't be opened by their degree of beauty. Bella Swan, what makes you think that? Bella is so shallow at times that it's actually unbearable. But don't fret, girly. She'll lose all her personality soon enough. It's 1:30 a.m. I lost all my makeup. Bella eventually makes it home and starts to interrogate Charlie about the Cullens. Sometimes I forget who's the cop here and who's the teenager. Charlie gets really angry for no reason at all. He starts praising the Cullens, or maybe just Carlisle. People in this town. Dr. Cullen is a brilliant surgeon who could probably work in any hospital in the world. Make 10 times the salary he gets here, he continued, getting louder. We're lucky to have him. Lucky that his wife wanted to live in a small town. He's an asset to the community. And they stick together the way a family should. Camping trips every other weekend. Oh, Charlie, if only you were a true parent to your own teenage daughter. He goes fishing every other day. He's never home. Bella points out that the Cullens are very attractive, because honestly, what else can she say about them? She does not know them. Charlie lets his little crush on Carlisle slip. You should see the doctor, Charlie said, laughing. It's a good thing he's happily married.
Me? Obsessed with you? Yes.
All I wrote here was, I bet you wish he wasn't. Edward is still ditching school, which Bella mentions every other paragraph. Edward Cullen didn't come back to school. Then she goes to biology class, I think. No longer worried that Edward would be there. For all I knew, he had dropped out of school. He honestly should. God, I cannot believe it's still the same chapter. Anyway, it snows. Bella hates snow, so it ruins her entire day. Whoa, Mike said. It's snowing. I looked at the little cotton fluffs that were building up along the sidewalk. Ew. Snow. There went my good day. There's no saving. This girl cannot have a good day since she came to work. Stephanie Meyer, give her a break. Turns out that Edward Cullen actually starts taking his education seriously, and it makes Bella so nervous. She starts feeling sick and cannot eat. This boy is not good for her health. Jessica is like, girl, Edward Cullen is staring at you. Finally, we have another biology lesson. Does she take any other lessons than biology and English? Put your seatbelts on, girly, because after avoiding Bella for a total of 8 days, the glorious Edward the Gaslighter enters the chat, and he will stay for a while. My name is Edward Cullen. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself last week. You must be Bella Swan. My mind was spinning with confusion. Had I made up the whole thing? This girl literally questions her own sanity after the second conversation with Edward Cullen. Edward completely switches his personality. He's also a different person now. Why is he even talking to her in the first place? If he's so tempted to unalive her, why talk to her? Just leave her alone. They proceed to whatever they're supposed to be working on. Bella is all awkward and quirky. Or I could start, if you wish. The smile faded. He was obviously wondering if I was mentally competent. Not only him. At some point, Edward touches Bella's hand. His fingers were ice cold, like he'd been holding them in a snowdrift before class. But that wasn't why I jerked my hand away so quickly. When he touched me, it stung my hand as if an electric current had passed through us. Don't be shy now. If just the brush of his hand stings, though, how does she find kissing him later pleasurable? If kissing someone would hurt me, I would avoid doing that. If touching someone would sting, I would do everything in my power to avoid even touching them. Moving on, Bella is like, hey, did you get contacts? Because I think your eyes were a different color last time we talked. Which obviously Edward denies. I have to give him some slack. He just met her. In reality, what was he supposed to say? I just drank some animal blood on the way here, so I wouldn't unalive you. But that, of course, makes Bella think that she's going crazy because of Ferks. Or maybe Ferks was making me crazy in the literal sense of the word. For some reason, Edward is pissed now, but his mood swings stopped bothering me at this point, honestly. Half a page later, he recovers and starts being a creep by bringing up a conversation Bella had with Jessica earlier. It's too bad about the snow, isn't it? I had the feeling that he was forcing himself to make small talk with me. Paranoia swept over me again. It was like he had heard my conversation with Jessica at lunch and was trying to prove me wrong. Why is she paranoid all the time? Also, how is she so perceptive? If it snows, it's natural he would bring it up. But during this conversation, we have a very fascinating line, and something like that happens multiple times through this book. I personally think it's very important. His dark gold eyes confused me, and I answered without thinking. Bella looks into Edward's eyes, feels confused, and answers without thinking. At some point later, she even states that she felt compelled to answering to him. They talk some more, and Bella tells Edward a little more about her reasoning behind moving to Ferks. For literally no reason at all, Edward starts projecting. You put on a good show, but I'd be willing to bet that you're suffering more than you let anyone see. Sir?
A depraved demon, sputtering psychoanalysis. Perhaps you speak from personal experience.
Why is he trying to convince her that she feels something she might not be? She never actually confirms that. So he's like, I don't think I'm wrong, actually. Go away at this point. Leave her alone. Then we have a little line that actually made me giggle a little. Edward admits to Bella that for some reason he can't figure her out. You must be a good reader then, I replied. Usually. Finally, we move on from this chapter. I'm not sure if it's the pacing in this book or I was just extremely tired of reading it for 100 times, but it was an exhausting experience. We have constant descriptions of Bella cooking, driving, doing laundry. Literally no part of her day-to-day life is so insignificant to edit out. Hello. Bella wakes up and immediately she is in a bad mood, unsurprisingly. But quickly, her mood gets better because she remembers that she will see Edward Cullen at school. I should be avoiding him entirely after my brainless and embarrassing babbling yesterday.
Babbling, bumbling band of baboons.
And I was suspicious of him. Why should he lie about his eyes? I don't know. He just met you. I was still frightened of the hostility I sometimes felt emanating from him, and I was still tongue-tied whenever I pictured his perfect face. I was well aware that my league and his league were spheres that did not touch. Bella openly admits to being frightened of him, which makes me question her sanity. Why can't she just stay away? Just move on. Don't talk to him. Ignore him. I forgot to mention this before, but Bella's one and only consistent flaw throughout this book is her clumsiness. Possibly my crippling clumsiness was seen as endearing rather than pathetic. Shut up. But why is this important, you might ask? Bella is on a school parking lot minding her own business, and then Tyler is trying to unalive her with his truck. It was a high-pitched screech. I looked up, startled. All this is happening. A truck is possibly gonna hit her, but none of it matters, because all Bella sees is Edward Cullen was standing 4 cars down from me, staring at me in horror. His face stood out from a sea of faces, all frozen in the same mask of shock. But Edward, screw the consequences Cullen, skips 4 rows of cars and saves Bella, because why wouldn't he at this point? After seeing this teenage boy use super strength and speed, Bella is not fazed by all of this. It was absolutely silent for 1 long second before the screaming began. In the abrupt bedlam, I could hear more than one person shouting my name, but more clearly than all the yelling, I could hear Edward Cullen's low, frantic voice in my ear. The only thing that matters is Edward Cullen. She could be possibly 6 feet under right now, but none of it matters. Edward instantly begins to gaslight her into thinking she has an head injury, which she might have, we don't know this, but ovations to Bella because she's eating none of it. I saw you. All around us was chaos, but I obstinately held on to our argument. I was right, and he was going to admit it. Obviously, none of it matters right now because 2 pages later, she starts spiraling. To be fair, if I saw someone using like super speed to save me, I would probably just be like, okay, thank you, bye. I don't care how you did that, thank you for saving my life. I tried to think of a logical solution that could explain what I had just seen, a solution that excluded the assumption that I was insane. They take Bella to the hospital, and all this time she dwells on her situation, honestly just going back and forward. I knew I wasn't crazy. What had happened? Just move on. But we are introduced to Carlisle, and Bella has better chemistry with him than his son in like 10 minutes. Then a doctor walked around the corner and my mouth fell open. He was young, he was blonde, and he was handsomer than any movie star I'd ever seen. Go for that, girly. He's not that much older. Also, let me send you back to her description of Edward up to this point. In none of them her jaw dropped like that. But honestly, how the fuck everyone believes that this man is in his early 30s when he was changed when he was 23 years old? Excuse me, but this is just not possible. Bella talks to Edward, but then again, that girl cannot catch a break with him, and he tries to gaslight her and even threatens her. Such a dreamy boy, right? What do you want from me, Bella? I want to know the truth. I want to know why I'm lying for you. What do you think happened? You think I lifted a van of you? His tone questioned my sanity, but it only made me more suspicious. It was like a perfectly delivered line by a skilled actor. Oh yeah. So dreamy. Honestly, it only proves me right when I say that vampires in this book are just mimicking humans. They are just pretending, copying what they saw on TV or around them in the real life. They are not capable of delivering lines by themselves. You're not going to let it go, are you? No. In that case, I hope you enjoy disappointment.
And here we go. I hope you're hungry. For nothing.
Bella is so mad that she almost cries, and on the next page she states that I was so angry it took me a few minutes until I could move. Ma'am, it's not healthy when someone makes you feel such intense emotions every freaking second. Bella escapes from her school friends because she's just an ungrateful brat, and her and Charlie go home. She's pissed that he told her mom about the accident, and we receive another banger of a line solidifying the fact that Renee is a terrible parent and Bella should have been taken away ages ago. She begged me to come home, forgetting the fact that home was empty at the moment. Her mother wants her to go back to Arizona, to the house that's empty. Chapter 4. Edward avoids Bella for like 4 weeks. It was the end of January when the accident happened. Now it's the first day of March, conveniently for the plot. We have some blubbering about the time that passed, but mainly about Edward Cullen, unsurprisingly. I can, in all fairness, say that Bella is not doing well. She has dreams of Edward every night and thinks about him all the time. After that, he was in my dreams nearly every night, but always on the periphery, never within reach. Because he is avoiding her, she assumes that he regrets saving her and admits that she's unable to stop herself from watching him. He wished he hadn't pulled me from the path of Taylor's van. There was no other conclusion I could come to. I don't know, maybe he just doesn't want to be friends. What about that? Honestly, is this girl okay? Just because he acts like a jerk doesn't mean he wishes she was 6 feet under. Like, come on. I watched him sometimes, unable to stop myself. From a distance though, in the cafeteria or parking lot, I watched as his golden eyes grew darker day by day. I was miserable, and the dreams continued. Bella is miserable for weeks because some boy doesn't give her attention. You belong in a cuckoo house, lady. Later, she even admits that the influence Edward has over her is unhealthy, but luckily for him, she forgets about that soon enough. I couldn't believe the rush of emotions pulsing through me. Just because he had happened to look at me for the first time in a half dozen weeks, I couldn't allow him to have this level of influence over me. It was pathetic. More than pathetic, it was unhealthy. We're back at school now, and Bella and Edward talk for a second. In true Edward fashion, he tells her it's better for them to stay away from each other. I couldn't agree more. Then what do you want, Edward? I asked, keeping my eyes closed. It was easier to talk to him coherently that way. I'm sorry, I'm being very rude, I know. If he would only stick to that, if he would just stay away. But see, it's there again. Bella has to close her eyes to be able to talk to Edward so he doesn't influence her thoughts. At this point, it's my headcanon that vampires have like hypnotizing effect on humans. Edward gets pissed at Bella because he let her believe that he hates her and she dares to believe it. Don't even let me start on these mood swings. When he finally spoke, he almost sounded mad. You think I regret saving your life? I know you do, I snapped. You don't know anything. He was definitely mad. Bella somehow trips and Edward helps her pick up the books that fell on the floor. Then I signed and bent to pick them up. He was there. He already stuck them up into a pile. Let me tell you this. At this point, he doesn't care. He doesn't even try to pretend to be human around her. He does this one time later when he catches her like car keys. And let me remind you, sir, that you are actively trying to gaslight this girl into believing you are not a superhuman. Gym was brutal. We'd move on to basketball. At least here I can relate. I hate basketball. I hate gym. The boys at the school are actively trying to invite Bella to the prom or some like spring dance or whatever, but she refuses them all. All of them, meaning 3, because no other boy exists in Forks High School beside like Collins and Mike, Tyler, and Eric. I think it was Eric. Edward is having an absolute blast while listening to this and watching her suffer. But from Midnight Sun, we actually know he is jealous. Eventually, Bella goes home, makes dinner, rumbling internally about Edward. My stomach twisted as I realized what he must have meant. He must see how absorbed I was by him. He must not want to lead me on, so we couldn't even be friends. Ariana Grande, calm down. Of course he wasn't interested in me, I thought angrily. my eyes stinging. She's crying again. A delayed reaction to the onions. Oh yeah, for sure. I wasn't interesting, and he was. Interesting, and brilliant, and mysterious, and perfect, and beautiful. What a nonsense. That's literally what I wrote in my notes. Absolute nonsense. Who hurt you, Bella Swan? Go to therapy. She sees herself as the dirt under Edward Cullen's shoe. Also, she barely knows Edward Cullen. Knows close to nothing about this boy, and immediately he is brilliant, perfect, beautiful. This book makes me want to appreciate my boyfriend even more for not being an abusive jerk. Remember how I said that Edward does the super speed thing again? Yes, it happens the next day in the parking lot. Getting out of the cab, I fumbled with my key and it fell into a puddle at my feet. As I bent to get it, a white hand flashed out and grabbed it before I could. Edward Cullen was right next to me, leaning casually against my truck. Sir, where is your consistency? You just told this girl that you cannot be friends, so stick to it. Stay away. How do you do that? I asked in amazed irritation. Do what? Appear out of thin air? Bella, it's not my fault if you are exceptionally unobservant. This girl is the most observant person in Forks, Washington. This gaslighting makes me sick, and I'm not even joking. In my notes, I wrote, this is getting ridiculous. And I don't think any other comment is needed at this point. Even Bella sees it. Do you have a multiple personality disorder? I actually bet he does. After that, he invites himself to Seattle with her, and a second later, once again, states that they should stay away from each other. Bella goes to her English class and then lunch, but as soon as she notices Edward is not here, she loses her appetite. Honestly, I start to believe that this girl has ED because this is getting out of hand. Luckily for her, Edward is there, and for the first time they are eating lunch together. I cannot think of that going in the wrong direction. I decided as long as I was going to hell, I might as well do it truthfully. Talk about dramatics. I'm not a fan of their relationship, but sometimes it is so clear that they are just made for each other. Bella has all sorts of theories about Edward possibly having superpowers. They discuss that for some time, and suddenly Edward remembers who is he talking to and asks if she's hungry.
Rebecca, love, eat your veggies.
Bella's response is golden. No, I didn't feel like mentioning that my stomach was already full of butterflies. Honestly, what is this? This is a banger line. We have blood testing that day, and we discovered that Bella doesn't do very well around blood. How does she decide later that she wants to be a blood-sucking demon is beyond my understanding. She feels kind of faint, and Mike is supposed to take her to the nurse office. Edward appears out of nowhere and scooped her in his arms. Does he ask for consent? He completely ignores her when she tells him to put her down. Talk about manhandling, which he does a lot, by the way. They end up in the nurse office eventually, and Edward gets strangely excited. Then he moved to stand against the wall as far across the narrow room as possible. His eyes were bright, excited. Now, is he excited because she's ill? What is going on in here? Then he argues with Bella, because of course he does, that humans can smell blood, which is actually not true. They can, according to Google, obviously. Once again, he manhandles her when she wants to go home. Where do you think you're going? He asked, outraged. He was gripping a fistful of my jacket in one hand. I'm going home, which she has a right to. She felt unwell 2 seconds ago. She has a right to go home. Why is this boy gripping her? So many questions, I swear. More of that, when Bella is clearly uncomfortable and thinks about running away from him, he threatens her to drag her back. Sir, what are you doing? But finally, he takes her home and they talk. Obviously, Edward needs to state his love for Debussy and proceeds to further groom this teenager. I'm 17, I responded, a little confused. You don't seem 17. Yes, Bella, trust this old man when he tells you that you're mature for your age. Oh, and Bella invites Edward to go with her and her friends to La Push. He's weird about going there. Somewhere between the lines, Bella says Mike Schmike, and that's insanely hilarious for no fucking reason. Chapter 6, and it's Friday. What's wrong about Friday? Well, let me tell you. The worst part about Friday was that even though I knew he wasn't going to be there, I still hoped. When I walked into the cafeteria with Jessica and Mike, I couldn't keep from looking at his table where Rosalie, Alice, and Jasper sat talking. I couldn't stop the gloom that engulfed me as I realized I didn't know how long I would have to wait before I saw him again. This girl needs help ASAP. Bella has this trip to La Push with her school friends. She's shitting on them all the way through, and we meet a 15-year-old Jacob. Altogether, a very pretty face. However, my positive opinion of his looks was damaged by the first words out of his mouth. I will never understand. Why is she so mean to everyone in her head? There's absolutely no reason for it except her awful personality. At some point, someone makes a comment about the Cullens not being welcomed in La Push. The Cullens don't come here, he said in a tone that closed the subject. Bella, knowing that Jacob has a crush on her, starts flirting with him to get information about the Cullens. She knows she doesn't have to flirt with him, but she does it anyway. I was still turning over the brief comment on the Cullens and I had a sudden inspiration. It was a stupid plan, but I didn't have any better ideas. Maybe because you're not a bright person. I hope that young Jacob was a yet unexperienced around girls so that he wouldn't see through my sure to be pitiful attempts at flirting.
When I don't care, I can play him like a Ken doll.
Because remember, Bella is not like the other girls. She doesn't know how to flirt. I know that Jacob's character gets assassinated later on in the series, but deep inside of me, I cannot blame Jacob for it. Bella is constantly sending him mixed signals. How is he supposed to respond to that? Since the beginning of their relationship, Bella is aware that he has a crush on her and takes advantage of it purposefully multiple times. It's disgusting. Do you come up to Fork's match? I asked archly, as if I was hoping for a yes. I was afraid he would turn on me with disgust and accuse me of my fraud, but he still seemed flattered. Honestly, it's not even funny. Oh, I won't tell anyone. I'm just curious. I don't want to remind everyone that Jacob just turned 15, but I will consistently. Eventually, Jake tells Bella the legends about the wolf and the cold ones. I'm sorry, but it always bugged me. Girl, you just heard a story about a wolfman making a treaty with this pale, cold, super strong and fast people. And Jacob even says it himself, that this story is supposed to be about the Cullens. I tried to keep my voice casual. So how does it fit in with the Cullens? Are they like the cold ones your grandfather met? No, he paused dramatically. They are the same ones. In chapter 7, Bella has another nightmare, this time inspired by the legends she heard and talk about foreshadowing girl. Jacob, I screamed, but he was gone. In his place was a large red-brown wolf with black eyes. Bella Googles vampires. Google, please sponsor me. I shut down a few more pop-ups and then typed in one word, vampire. Honestly, I had the same issue with the pop-ups, and then my boyfriend told me I had like 1,000 viruses on my laptop. So then I found a promising site, Vampires A to Z. I found that site, and ironically I would trust that site more than Twilight when it comes to vampire lore. Not sure if it's the same one Bella used, because I heard it was taken down or something. Despite the Cullens skipping school and work at every possible sunny day, Bella comes to the conclusion that Edward can walk in the sun actually, so he must not be a vampire. She goes about her life then, trying to figure out the issue at hand. She rejects Mike in the meantime and then gets depressed when the Cullens don't show up at school on a sunny day. As was my routine, I glanced first toward the Cullens table. A shiver of panic trembled in my stomach as I realized it was empty. Desolation hit me with crippling strength. At this point, she just sounds like an addict, but the day goes on, Bella makes it through her school day and goes back home. She reads Jane Austen and falls asleep in her yard and then makes dinner for Charlie. He seemed happy though, to be doing something together. And it felt good, despite my depression, to make him happy. Bella is depressed again because Edward is skipping school. I don't know what he did to her, but y'all, she is addicted. In chapter 8, Bella goes to Port Angeles with her girlfriends and experiences an estrogen rush that was invigorating. Bella, Angela, and Jessica are shopping for dresses, but Bella is not like the other girls. She's a different breed and goes to find a bookstore because she loves books that much. R.I.P. Bella Swan, you would love book talk. She ends up in this abandoned part of Port Angeles where no sane person would own a bookstore and gets cornered by a group of men who have very clear, not PG-13 intentions. Edward pops out of like thin air in his expensive shiny silver Volvo and acts all dominant and alpha male.
I don't have to prove anything, love. I am the alpha male.
Headlights suddenly flew around the corner, the car almost hitting the stocky one, forcing him to jump backward toward the sidewalk. This car was going to stop or have to hit me. Get in, a furious voice commanded, my god. Honestly, was Edward Cullen the inspiration for the possessive mafia boss? He growls and him and Bella drive away. Bella's all confused, asking him how and why the fuck was he there. Reasonably, but lets it go easily because why would she need that knowledge actually? How did you know where I began? But then I just shook my head. I heard the door open and turned to see him getting out. Finally, they end up in Bella Italia with this famous mushroom ravioli, and Edward admits that he can read minds, but he cannot read hers. Honestly, for the better, because that girl is not who he thinks she is. Also, we learned that apparently Edward was oblivious to how people react to him for the past 100 years. You really shouldn't do that to people, I criticized. It's hardly fair. Do what? Dazzle them like that. She's probably hyperventilating in the kitchen right now. He seemed confused. I doubt he didn't know the effect he has on people. I call bullshit. He knows exactly what he is doing. I feel very safe with you, I confessed, mesmerized into telling the truth again. See? I told you before, he's hypnotizing her or something. I swear to God. Edward also manages to victim blame Bella during this conversation. Only you could get into trouble in a town this small. You would have devastated their crime rate statistics for a decade, you know? But it's all okay because now he can stalk Bella to keep her safe. He finally explains to her why he followed her to Port Angeles. Bella, in a very true to her character fashion, is not fazed by any of this. I wondered if it should bother me that he was following me. Instead, I felt a strange surge of pleasure. He stared, maybe wondering why my lips were curving into an involuntary smile. Honey, you need therapy immediately. Anyway, we quickly end up in chapter 9. I find it progressively easier to go through them somehow. Maybe because it's almost 3 a.m. They are still discussing Bella's theories and she admits that she is not scared of him, but of his reactions. Enough commentary on my driving, he snapped. I'm still waiting for your latest theory. Why is he so mad all the time? I won't laugh, he promised. I'm more afraid that you'll be angry with me. Edward finally admits that he is a vampire and states that he cannot be around Bella once again because he might end up sucking her dry. But she says it really doesn't matter to her. No, I said softly, it doesn't matter to me what you are. You don't care if I'm a monster? If I'm not human? Bella is like, well, okay, slow down with the drama. And they talk about how much they are anxious to be away from each other, blah, 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 blah. It's wrong. It's not safe. I'm dangerous, Bella. Please, grasp that. No, he is literally telling her to get a grip. It's actually hilarious. Later that night, Bella decides that she is, in fact, in love with Edward Cullen. It's exactly 7 days after they start speaking to each other. About 3 things I was absolutely positive. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was part of him, and I didn't know how potent that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. Does she know what it means to be unconditionally in love with someone? I doubt that. In chapter 10, we get the most iconic hot walk to ever exist. And Edward and Bella decide that they are, in fact, a couple now. Also, Edward is actively listening to the thoughts of students who are interacting with Bella, which is insanely creepy. So Jessica wants to know if Edward and Bella are like dating now and how Bella feels about him, and Bella doesn't really know how to answer. Luckily, she has Edward to tell her what she thinks. He paused to catch a stray lock of hair that was escaping the twist on my neck. My heart spluttered hyperactively. I suppose you could say yes to the first, if you don't mind. It's easier than any other explanation. I don't mind. And as for the other question, well, I'll be listening to hear the answer to that one myself. Wink, wink. This is so disturbing. Gross. I think Edward listened to Invasion of Privacy by Cardi B one too many times, and I think he also missed the point. The boys at school are apparently pissed that Bella is dating Edward now because they feel like they cannot compare, and the day goes on. Bella is still interrogating Edward about Vampires 101, but then something very interesting happens. Edward once again shows his gaslighting abilities. Do you truly believe that you care more for me than I do for you? His dark golden eyes piercing. I tried to remember how to exhale. I had to look away before it came back to me. This boy constantly reminds Bella that she should stay away from him, that he wants to unalive her, that he even plotted it on the first day they met. There's more though. He manhandles her. He is constantly hostile towards her. He makes her think she's crazy and is surprised and angry that she thinks he doesn't like her. Make it make sense. It gets better because Bella is drowning in self-pity and adoration for Edward. After meeting her, his ego tripled in size, I swear to God. Well, look at me. I'm absolutely ordinary. Well, except for bad things like all the near-death experiences and being so clumsy that I'm almost disabled. And look at you. Stephanie Meyer seems to think that being clumsy is a personality trait. Later, Edward says something interesting and it made me think actually. This book rarely does, so I appreciate that moment. If living is the right thing to do, then I'll hurt myself to keep from hurting you, to keep you safe. This motherfucker already knows that he's gonna leave her. We know what happens in the next book. Then they discuss the promised trip to Seattle. Spoiler, it's not gonna happen. And once again, Edward is treating Bella like a child. How is he managing to do it so often? I have no idea, but it's like he's purposefully creating opportunities to do this. Yes, he smiled and then paused. But if you don't want to be alone with me, I'd still rather you didn't go to Seattle by yourself. I shudder to think of the trouble you could find in a city this size. Phoenix is 3 times bigger than Seattle. But apparently, he interrupted me, your number wasn't up in Phoenix. She was just fine. For this 17 years old of her life. Catch a break, Eddie. Next chapter, Mike is getting jealous over Bella and Edward obnoxiously parading around the school. And why is everyone so obsessing over each other in this story? It actually makes no sense. No one behaves like that in real life. Bella talks to Edward and then they're looking into each other's eyes. Our eyes held and the silence deepened and changed. Flickers of the electricity I'd felt this afternoon began to charge the atmosphere as he gazed unrelentingly into my eyes. It wasn't until my head started to swim that I realized I wasn't breathing. The effect he has on her is beyond my understanding. And again, I'm pretty sure Edward knows exactly what he's doing to her and he's like, just go home, girly pop. Bella goes to sleep and next day Edward picks her up to drive her to school, and I didn't realize how many times the Debussy was mentioned in this book. I swear. Once again, we have a reminder that Bella was actually scared of his mood swings when they're playing 21 questions. I given more information than necessary in my unwilling honesty, again with these things Bella says without wanting to, and I worried it would provoke the strange anger that flared whenever I slipped and revealed too clearly how obsessed I was. And she signs in relief when he doesn't get angry. How is she not a victim of abuse? After school, they chill in the car outside the house when Billy and Jacob Black come to visit. Billy gets pissed when he sees Bella and Edward chilling together because he's actually the one and only adult in Bella's life who knows about the supernatural drama going on, and he wants them to break up, obviously. I cannot even blame him. He is scared shitless for her life. Through all of this, Jacob is a clueless ball of sunshine. They talk for some time, and Billy embarrasses Jacob by spilling that Jake has a crush on Bella, like she didn't know already. Chapter 12. Let's go. We're speeding through this for real now, and somehow we're still just like 50%, and this video is gonna take me forever to edit, and I already hate myself. Bella tells Charlie that she's not actually going to Seattle and proceeds to do some wifey duties at home while thinking about her relationship with Edward, because what else would she be thinking about? And what was my other choice? To cut him out of my life? Yes. Besides, since I'd come to Fergus, it really seemed like my life was about him, because it is. You do not think about anything else. Honestly, for the amount of thinking she does, the idea of actually not getting involved with this old abusive groomer seems to escape her mind. Especially that she seems to be well aware how unhealthy all of this is for her. Bella is very stressed about going out with Eddie, and we get one of the funniest scenes in this book. I knew I was far too stressed to sleep, so I did something I never done before. I deliberately took unnecessary cold medicine, the kind that knocked me out for a good 8 hours. I normally wouldn't condone to that type of behavior in myself, but tomorrow would be complicated enough without me being loopy from sleep deprivation on top of everything else. Kids, don't date 100-year-old vampires, or you end up like Isabel Marie Swan, taking NyQuil to knock yourself to sleep. Edward takes Bella to the meadow, but before that, he gets mad at her for not telling anyone that she's going out with him, because now he doesn't have a motivation to bring her back. Sir, for a member of we value human life so much, Coven of Cullen family, or whatever you're called, you sure don't act like you respect human life. Chapter 13, and Edward shows the skin of a killer Bella. Edward in the sunlight was shocking. Oh, I bet. I couldn't get used to it. His skin, white despite the faint flash from yesterday's hunting trip, literally sparkled like thousands of tiny diamonds were embedded into the surface. Bejeweled is the only word for me to actually be able to describe it. I cannot imagine finding myself attracted to a guy who sparkles like a disco ball. Edward must have the most insanely high ego after that date. The meadow, so spectacular to me at first, paled next to his magnificence. Something she strokes his chest or whatever, his arm. Give me a break. I know Robert is handsome, but in no universe Edward Cullen is even comparable. Bella tries to kiss Edward, and he runs the fuck away because he is pissed at her, overwhelmed with the desire to suck her blood. Obviously, Bella is not fazed by this whatsoever, quite the opposite. I could feel the hurt and shock on my face. My empty hands stung. He later apologized, so it's all good. Please forgive me, he said formally. I can control myself, but I'm on my best behavior now. I'm not thirsty today. Honestly, he winked. At that, I had to laugh. One it's not even funny. Bella, stop stroking his ego even further. 2, why is he talking like that? It sounds so fake, so creepy, like something he heard once and memorized just to repeat at this very moment. They talk about some non-important stuff. Edward once again repeats himself about wanting to unalive Bella, and she whines that she doesn't want him to leave her. Of course, we have the iconic line about the personal brand of heroin and lion falling for lamb, and what a stupid lamb, what a stupid lion. Edward calls his classmates children and calls Bella a little girl, which would be quite hot if he wasn't 100 years old. Finally, they kiss, and then his cold marble lips pressed very softly against mine. What neither of us was prepared for was my response. Blood boiled under my skin, burned my lips. My breath came in a wild gasp. My lips parted as I breathed in his heady scent. I'm pretty sure Bella's effort to speedrun the bases could be described as an assault, because Edward is very much not into this. And we finally have a confirmation that Eddie knows exactly what he's doing when he says to her, "You're intoxicated by my very presence." He was grinning that playful smirk again. Why is this funny to him? I do not understand. Is he actually enjoying that she cannot think straight around him? It is the next day. Apparently, I cannot sit through the night and record these videos because I would go insane. All night, I was dreaming about being in Twilight. How insane is that? I mean, it's not unusual considering that I constantly read fan fictions. But chapter 13. Edward tells Bella a little bit about Carlisle and his family. We learn that Carlisle only turns people who are on the verge of... Edward also directly lies to Bella, telling her that Esme fell from a cliff, which, as Twilight fans know, and Bella will know later in this book, is not true. Esme jumped from a cliff, trying to unalive herself because she was so depressed by losing her baby. We'll learn a little bit about Emmett and Rosalie here, but not that much, honestly. Hello, Priscilla. I will never, ever forgive Carlisle for what he did to Rosalie. Just end this suffering for her, honestly. What's interesting here is what Edward tells Bella about Alice and Jasper. Alice and Jasper are two very rare creatures. What is with my hair? They both developed a conscience, as we refer to it, with no outside guidance. Jasper belonged to another family, a very different kind of family. He became depressed and he wandered on his own. Alice found him. Like me, she has certain gifts above and beyond the norm of our kind. Once again, Edward lies to Bella. I mean, is sugarcoating the truth a lying? He told her that before joining the Cullens, Jasper was a part of a different family. Excuse me, sir. Do soldiers with PTSD refer to the army as their family? I don't think so. Back to the point. I am very intrigued about the words he used. Do vampires lose their conscience when they turn during the transformation? Why do they have to develop it? He used the words developed a conscience as we refer to it. What do you mean? Is what you develop not the conscience that humans have? What is going on here? We also learned that Alice can see the future and Jasper is an empath. That's for later. I swear, I could rant for hours about why Carlisle Cullen is actually a villain in the story, despite being absolutely stunning. He guilt trips his family, or so-called family, into believing they are monsters if they follow their instincts. How messed up is this? Edward admits that he was spying on Bella and she talks in her sleep. To which Bella is like, well, I'm pissed, but as long as you're sorry, you can continue doing it. You spied on me. But somehow, I couldn't infuse my voice with the proper outrage. I was flattered. Excuse me, in what universe a victim of stalking would be flattered. This is insane. Bella Swan needs therapy immediately. Later, they make out in her room, and Eddie does one of the creepiest things in this book. I mean, maybe not. 1 of 10, it's definitely on the list. Don't go away then, I responded, unable to hide the longing in my voice. That suits me, he replied, his face relaxing into a gentle smile. Bring on the shackles. I am your prisoner. But his long hands formed manacles around my wrists.
Are the shackles too tight?
He is not your prisoner. Quite the opposite, I would say. I would run far, far away from this man. Honestly, I feel like we're just speeding through these chapters and I'm skipping pages on pages of text, but they do nothing beside pinning for each other and saying how much they want it but can't have it. That was the first night I came here. I wrestled all night while watching you sleep with the chasm between what I knew was right, moral, ethical, and what I wanted. I knew that if I continued to ignore you as I should, or if I left you for a few years till you were gone, that someday you would say yes to Mike or someone like him. It made me angry. Edward knows exactly what he's doing. He knows it's bad. He knows it's creepy and wrong, but he still proceeds with it because he is selfish. He even says it on the meadow when they're like hanging out. I skipped it, but it's somewhere here. But don't worry, I'm essentially a selfish creature. I crave your company too much to do what I should. He says it himself. At the end of the chapter, Bella, let's be honest, being a normal 17-year-old is like, well, what if we have one day? And Edward is flabbergasted. He's like, only after marriage, but even then, I would not do it. I would break you, so no, ma'am. That's certainly a problem, but that's not what I was thinking of. It's just that you are so soft, so fragile. I have to I have to mind my actions every moment that we're together so that I don't hurt you. I could kill you quite easily, Bella, simply by accident. This is just creepy, and how is Bella fine with it? I'm sorry, but if a man would tell me that if we get intimate one day, he might rip me to shreds, I would not be very excited to get close to him. But Bella is a-okay with this knowledge. Chapter 15. Bella wakes up in Edward's arms and gets ready to meet the Cullens. Charlie, I remember. He left an hour ago. After reattaching your battery cables, I might add. I have to admit, I was disappointed. Is that really all it would take to stop you if you were determined to go? Talk about foreshadowing. This man, a cop,
Yeah, bring it.
attached his daughter's battery cables. He was so scared that his teenage daughter, who went out 3 times during this book, would sneak out in the middle of the night. This is simply absurd. Bella learns that once again she was talking in her sleep and this time confessed her love for Edward. You knew that already, I reminded him, ducking my head. It was nice to hear just the same. I love you. You are my life now. I don't know, something bugs me about this dialogue. I just can't put my finger on it. He threw me over his stone shoulder gently, but with a swiftness that left me breathless. I'm pretty sure that hitting his shoulders left you breathless, but okay. I protested as he carried me easily down the stairs, but he ignored me. Manhandling Bella Swan, episode 137. After that, Bella eats breakfast, and we have very weird exchange when Edward demands to be introduced to Charlie. And you should introduce me to your father too. I don't know, man. If I feel like doing it, I will. I stared at him with suspicion. Why? Isn't that customary? He asked innocently. Yeah, maybe 1920s, maybe. Are you going to tell Charlie I'm your boyfriend or not? This is so uncomfortable. I wanna crawl out of my skin. But okay. Bella gets dressed in her long khaki skirt and blue blouse that Edward likes. Ow! Don't bite me. Okay, I bounce down the stairs. I'm decent. Wrong again. You are utterly indecent. No one should look so tempting. It's not fair. And I'm sitting here asking you, is this the scene that inspired 50 Shades of Grey? Is this that dominant, sexy Christian Grey that we see here. Getting hot over a khaki skirt and a blue blouse. Anyway, this might be one of the cringiest scenes in this book. Edward kisses Bella again and our girly faints. "Shall I explain how you are tempting me?" he said. His fingers traced slowly down my spine, his breath coming more quickly against my skin. My hands were limp on his chest, and I felt lightheaded again. He tilted his head slowly and touched his cool lips to mine for the second time, and then I collapsed. How embarrassing is this? And the worst part is, it's not even Edward's fault. It's Edward's juju that makes her high. No, that wasn't the same kind of fainting at all. I don't know what happened. I shook my head apologetically. I think I forgot to breathe. And they say romance is dead. Bella meets the Cullens. They all pretty nice to her. I mean, maybe not my girly Rosie. Let's be honest, she does have some solid ground for being not very supportive of this relationship. Bella's presence and knowledge of vampires is an active threat to Cullens. It's a very high risk. And we know Rosie is very protective when it comes to her family, because one of the arguments she raises is what happens if Eddie loses it and drains Bella.
You better hold on tight, spider monkey.
And here I would like to open a discussion about Alice and Bella's relationship, their friendship, because I personally think that Alice is not Bella's best friend. She is Edward's, and she only gets close to Bella because she's an ultimate wingman at this point. The only thing that actually connects them is their mutual obsession with Edward. "Hi, Bella," Alice said, and she bounced forward to kiss my cheek. Why did I say that so weird? There was shock in my eyes too, but I was also very pleased that she seemed to approve of me entirely. "You do smell nice. I never noticed before," she commented, to my extreme embarrassment. This is so uncomfortable, honestly. After the introductions, Bella learns a bit about the Cullens' history again, and Edward spills about a little tea. Rosalie is jealous of me? I tried to imagine a universe in which someone as breathtaking as Rosalie would have any possible reason to feel jealous of someone like me. You're human. She wishes that she were too. No one can convince me that Bella doesn't have a crush on Rosalie. Carly and Esme are happy to see me happy. Actually, Esme wouldn't care if you had a third eye and webbed feet. All this time, she's been worried about me, afraid that there was something missing from my essential makeup, that I was too young when Carly changed me. You were, you should not be changed at any point. She's ecstatic. Every time I touch you, she just about chokes with satisfaction. I know that this was intended to be an adorable, cute mother-son moment. I know that, but every time I read this is just so weird. Why is his supposed mother ecstatic every time he touches his girlfriend? This is not a healthy dynamic. Bella cries for some reason, and Edward licks her tears. He touched the corner of my eye, trapping one I missed. He lifted his finger, examining the drop of moisture broodingly. He broods over her tears. Then, so quickly, I couldn't be positive that he really did. He put his finger to his mouth to taste it. "Miss Girl."
Run.
For all the Carlisle obsessed girls, it's chapter 16, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we're skipping almost the entire chapter. In his more rebel years, Edward slipped and fed on humans quite a few times.
Naughty, naughty.
That doesn't repulse you? No. Why not? I guess it sounds reasonable. The list of things Bella would justify just because it's Edward is endless. They together for a few days and she already worships the ground he's walking on. Then Eddie tries to once again scare her away. "I hate to burst your bubble, but you're really not as scary as you think you are." "I don't find you scary at all, actually." "You really shouldn't have said that," he chuckled. He growled a low sound in the back of his throat. His lips curled back over his perfect teeth. Do other girls? I bet they do, because I saw it on TikTok. When they read things like that, they're just like, "He growled." We all do this weird expressions when we read. He wasn't having that. He curled me into a ball against his chest, holding me more securely than iron chains. You were saying? He growled playfully. Stop the growling. Not cute. Not sexy. That you are a very, very terrifying monster. Much better, he approved. At this point, I'm not sure, is this his idea of foreplay? Then Alice has a vision of the storm coming, and the Cullens decide to play baseball. Actually, Jasper said, smiling despite himself as he walked into my room. What did I just read? Again, actually, Jasper said, smiling despite himself as he walked into the room. Alice says that there's going to be a real storm tonight and Emma wants to play ball.
My monkey man.
Are you game? I would play whatever this man wants me to play, honestly. Vampires like baseball? It's the American pastime. I have no idea what any of these words mean. I know nothing about baseball, so I will leave it for the comment section to explain. I would like to point out that this is also the only time baseball is mentioned in this series, and talk about plot convenience. Chapter 17, everyone. We are almost done. Bella, in her I hate sports personality, is obviously like, yes, I want to see my man play. And she does. She travels with this strange family to the woods during the storm. But before she can go, she tells Charlie about Edward.
He wanted to meet you. Officially.
All right. Bring him in.
Dad, are you alright? You are going out with Edward Cullen? He thundered. I thought you liked the Cullens. He's too old for you. We're both juniors, I corrected. Wait, he paused. Which one is Edwin? Charlie, I love you. They have a very uncomfortable discussion about boys, but in general, it goes pretty well. We end up in the woods with the most insane thirst trap in modern cinema. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, obviously, Edward kisses Bella, and she, instead of remaining motionless like a doll, dares to move. There really was no excuse for my behavior. Obviously, I knew better by now, and yet I couldn't seem to stop from reacting exactly as I had the first time. Instead of keeping safely motionless, my arms reached up to twine tightly around his neck. I sighed, and my lips parted. It is a very normal human interaction. He kisses her, so she responds accordingly. Come on! But that pisses Edward off, because if she moves, he might lose control. Then, in a very Eddie fashion, he tries to gaslight her into believing that he wasn't actually mad at her. You were mad, I insisted. Yes, but you just said that I wasn't mad at you. Can you see that, Bella? He was suddenly intense, all trace of teasing gone. And then actually it gets worse. Then why? I whispered, remembering the black moods that pulled him away from me, that I'd always interpreted as well-justified frustration. Frustration at my weakness, my slowness, my unruly human reactions. If he cannot control himself around a human, just don't date humans. Bella actually blames herself for being the human, obviously. She actually believes him. She thinks it's her fault, her human body's fault, when Edward gets mad. Moving on, Esme and Bella have their bonding time. Esme tells her, this girl that she just met like 5 minutes ago, her life story. Yes, my first and only baby. He died just a few days after he was born. It broke my heart. That's why I jumped off the cliff. It is actually a very sad story. It's a tragic background. Edward just said you fell. Always the gentleman, she smiled. I wouldn't say he was being a gentleman. He could have, for example, not spill people life stories like that. Maybe that's just me. The rest of the vampires are having fun, running around, catching the ball, or whatever you do when you don't stare at Major Jasper Whitlock. Suddenly, Alice is like, oh well, there are 3 hunters coming and they want to play with us. We start chapter 18 and Edward is freaking the fuck out. Few minutes later, the hunters, Lauren, Victoria, and James, as we learn, come and they're like, yo, we could use a shower. and some company. We've been on the hunt all the way down from Ontario and we haven't had the chance to clean up in a while. Did you meet Justin Bieber? That is my question. His eyes moved over Carlyle's refined appearance. This guy is actively checking Carlyle out, and truthfully, I cannot blame him. Carlyle started some boring discussion with the hunters, also telling them to not hunt in the area. It pretty quickly goes to shit when James catches the scent of a very human Bella and goes feral over it. He wants her bad, and I mean it. My hair ruffled with the light breeze, Edward stiffened, and the second male, James, suddenly whipped his head around, scrutinizing me, his nostrils flaring. If a vampire moves too quickly, can he break his neck? Can it just like fall off? The questions I wanna know the answers to, Stephanie Meyer. Edward bared his teeth, crouching in defense, a feral snarl ripping from his throat. This man is an animal, Bella. He is not better than the shapeshifters from the res. After that, we have action on action on action. This is the most dynamic the story ever was, and we have maybe like 100 pages left. Edward, being the controlling freak he is, decides that Bella needs to go. She has to disappear from Forks right this second, and he gives no shit about what it would mean for her. We reach the jeep in an impossibly short time, and Edward belly slowed as he flung me in the backseat. Strap her in. Excuse me, sir. Some boundaries, maybe. Why is he treating her like an object? It clearly shows that he has no regard for humans whatsoever. I just spilled my coffee on this white blanket. Turn around! You have to take me home! I shouted. I struggled with the stupid harness, tearing at the straps. Emmett secured my hands in his steel grasp. At this moment, what was playing in my head was like,
Oh my god, my Shayla. My Shayla.
Because Emmett is such a ball of sunshine. I love him. And yet, he is manhandling a woman. He could be manhandling me. No, Edward, no, you can't do this. I have to Bella. No, please, be quiet. He is treating her like a child. Worse, I would not manhandle a child like that. And this is straight up abuse, by the way. Like, however you look at this is keeping her against her will.
This is kidnapping.
That's a little melodramatic, don't you think?
I mean, come on. This is a 17-year-old who is still very much in high school, living with her human dad who has no idea about the supernatural drama. You cannot just kidnap her like that. Some common sense, sir. We have to take her back. No, he's no match for us, Edward. He won't be able to touch her. They argue for a bit, Emma saying he could take James on his own, and I believe him, honestly. At first, Bella disagrees to leave the town, but once they corner her, she's like, okay, let's make a plan on how to break my father's heart. You're leaving tonight, whether the trucker sees or not. You tell Charlie that you can't stand another minute in Forks. Tell him whatever story works. You have 15 minutes, do you hear me? 15 minutes from the time you cross the doorstep. Look, I'm not a parent, and I certainly do not think that Charlie is a good dad, but in all fairness, that decision comes to Bella way too quick. Bella, Edward's voice was very soft. Alice and Emmett looked out their windows. They are trying not to make her feel uncomfortable with their listening. We all know you can hear it. Just stop pretending. If you let anything happen to yourself, anything at all, I'm holding you personally responsible. There is a vampire psycho who's hunting this girl down, but Edward will hold her responsible if something happens. Chapter 19. I want to show you how far in the story we are. This is what we already talked about. This is how much we have left. After a pretend fight with Edward, saying some pretty hurtful stuff to Charlie, while packing, Bella runs the fuck away from home, under a pretense that she's going back to Phoenix, Arizona. I'm not the most logical person. Quite frankly, I use my emotions as I go through life, but this is another level of stupidity. You have a vampire with super hearing who wants to unalive you and might or might not be listening at the very moment. While running away from home, you tell your father exactly where you're going, hoping that the person who wants to find you will think that you're bluffing. It is partially your fault. If you didn't smell so appallingly luscious, you might not have bothered when I defended you. Well, That made it a lot worse. This here would actually make me so pissed. Edward is aware that his reaction made the hunt more fun for James, but he still blames Bella for all of this because she smells good. Make it make sense, honestly. Then Bella learns about unaliving vampires. How can you kill a vampire? The only way to be sure is to tear him to shreds and then burn the pieces. Not that she will ever need this knowledge, having a whole coven of gifted vampires to fight for her. Then Lauren is spilling some of his ex-coven secrets and runs away to Alaska. The Cullens plan a whole diversion for James. I feel like my voice is giving up at this point. I don't know what happened. Most of the Cullens are gonna stay in Forks, spread Bella's scent around.
Why?
While Alice, Jasper, and Bella go to Phoenix. And to Phoenix, Arizona, they go in chapter 20, and they go by car. Why is this important, you might ask? Let's briefly talk about Jasper's driving. It is insane. I'm gonna count how many times I said insane during this book. The timeline of this trip is something else. I will be referencing what we have in the book, but also an outtake titled Shopping with Alice. If you want to check it out by yourself, I can leave you a link in the description. According to Google Maps, and I actually did Google this, the drive from Forks to Phoenix is 1,500 miles. It would take 25 hours without any breaks. While Alice and Jasper don't have to stop to pee or eat, Bella is still very much a human and could use some of things, and they did stop. Keeping that in mind, I want you all to know that their drive took maybe like 12 hours. Now, they leave on 13th of March, sometime during the night, and I'm assuming that because when they arrive at the Cullens' house, Bella says, "We drove right up to the house. The lights inside were bright, but they did little to elevate the blackness of the encroaching forest." They drive during the night. Apparently, Jasper drives at more than twice the legal speed. Jasper never drove the Brownie car below 120 miles per hour. He seemed utterly unaware of speed limits. What is exactly the legal speed, you might ask? Well, I'm happy to provide the answer. Washington, 60 miles per hour, but can be up to 75. Oregon, 65. Nevada, 70. Why did I pronounce it so weirdly? Arizona, 75. The dog catches them in California, which means that they drove through Cali. The legal speed is 65. They stop in Los Angeles for a quick shopping spree. Assuming they did not choose the best route from Forks to Phoenix and instead traveled near the coast, the drive there is 20 hours 41 minutes to Los Angeles. So they cut 20 hours to what? 7, 8, something around that. Early evening on 14th, they already in Phoenix, and it's another insane fact for me because the drive from Forks to LA was insanely fast, but then a 5-hour drive to Phoenix for Los Angeles took them entire afternoon. I don't know about you guys, but before I was a sort of responsible adult, the stuff never bothered me, but now I cannot stop thinking about it. Anyway, before someone cancels me on this app saying it's just a fiction, they make it to Phoenix. They're spending some time in the hotel room, not actually doing anything specific, and just waiting for some news from Edward. Jasper actually says something interesting to Bella. Our family is strong. Our only fear is losing you. But why should you? And that's a very good question. Why this family would care so deeply about a girl they met like 3 minutes ago? It's been almost a century that Edward's been alone. Now he's found you. Do you think any of us would look into his eyes for the next 100 years if he loses you? They do not care about Bella Swan. They only care about Edward being depressed if something happens to Bella. Alice spills the tea on how to become a vampire, but mostly it's just Bella spiraling. And then boom, Alice gets a vision. She's drawing what she sees, and pretty quickly Bella is like, "Hey, I think it's my ballet studio. I see a room. It's long and there are mirrors everywhere. The floor is wooden." He's in the room and he's waiting. There's gold, a gold stripe across the mirrors. Alice, why do I pronounce her name so weirdly? Alice gets worried, but Bella, our Queen of Oblivion, is like, "You know what? Every studio looks similar, so probably Probably it's not the same one. Not the one I know. Finally, Edward calls, but with some pretty bad news. Apparently, they lost James, and no one really knows where he is at the moment. Turns out James is actually on his way to Phoenix, so the Collins quickly hop on a plane. Chapter 21. Bella calls her mom and leaves her a voice message because she can't let Renee come to Phoenix while there's a vampire predator running around. Actually, very considerate of her. It's a shame she did not pay Charlie the same sentiment. Next thing we know, and Bella actually gets a call, but instead of her mom, Bella hears the creepy voice on the other side of the phone. Sweets, really don't want to scare you, but I have your mom, and you better do what I say. Now, I don't need to hurt your mother, so please do exactly as I say, and she'll be fine. I remember I read this one fanfiction, and James was also there as a villain. He was actually portrayed so creepy. I cannot unsee him now when I read this. Slowly, my thoughts started to break past the brick wall of pain, for I had no choices now but one, to get to the mirrored room and die. I had no guarantees, nothing to give to keep my mother alive. I could only hope that James would be satisfied with winning the game, that beating Edward would be enough. Despair gripped me. There was no way to bargain, but I still had my choice. I had to try. See, I think it's a problem with Stephanie Meyer's writing. This is supposed to be emotionally charged scene. A scene where I was supposed to be sympathetic towards Bella because she has a terrible conflict to face. But throughout this entire book, Bella was either depressed, in love with Edward, or in despair because she missed him.
And I can go back to sulking and Elena longing and forehead brooding.
I choked back the dread and anxiety, tried to stifle it. I couldn't afford it now. And now at this moment when it would be completely justified to feel these emotions, I cannot take her seriously. I had to accept that I wouldn't see Edward again, not even one last glimpse of his face to carry me to the mirror room. I was going to hurt him and I couldn't say goodbye. It's not only Edward she would be seeing for the last time and leaving alone if James would unalive her, yet neither of her parents are on her mind. This is making me so mad, girl. You have no idea. Bella leaves a letter for Edward, and in chapter 22, she does exactly what James told her to do, quickly planning her escape to save Renee. Our trio goes to the airport to pick up the rest of the Collins. I don't know how Bella knows this airport so well, but she does, and escapes through the bathroom with 2 sets of doors. She takes the cab to her old house, just to find a letter from James telling her to go to the dance studio from Alice's vision, and when she steps out of the cab, she has a very interesting thought. The sun was hot on my skin, too bright as it bounced off the white concrete and blinded me. I wished for the green, protective forest of Forks of home. This girl is loathing Forks with all her heart. At least she was 2 weeks ago. But now I'm supposed to believe it's her home. Please. 400 pages ago it was an alien planet. Surprisingly for no one, Bella goes to the dance studio, hoping to sacrifice herself. She hears Renee, and turns out it's not really Renee. It's an old recording of Bella and her mom just playing in the background, and it was all just a trick. Sorry about that, Bella, but isn't it better that your mother didn't really have to be involved in all this? I think it was actually very nice of him. He was so average looking, nothing remarkable about his face or body at all. Stephanie Meyer got me here, cause weren't vampires supposed to be like perfect, super attractive? James is like, surprise honey, hope you like my party trick, and starts his 4 pages long monologue about how he found her. I'm not even joking at this point. Actually, it's 5 pages, not 4. I was wrong. Well, our hopes differ then. I expected a much greater challenge, and after all, I only needed a little luck. And then starts beating the fuck out of Bella while recording it for Edward. I'm sorry, but I just don't think he'll be able to resist hunting me after he watches this. You're simply a human who unfortunately was in the wrong place at the wrong time and indisputably running with the wrong crowd, I might add. Every time I read this scene, I'm like, you sick motherfucker. At the same time, it's very hard not to agree with James' reasoning here. Pretty quickly, as expected from a human being tortured by a supernatural being, Bella starts to travel to the unconscious land in the last possible moment. In chapter 23, Edward shows up with his gang.
I think that went well.
And in that moment, she realizes her arm is burning. The Collins realize that she was bitten by James, and Carlisle, so unlike him, makes a decision that Edward has to suck the venom out. There may be a chance. What? See, if you can suck the venom back out, the wound is fairly clean. And I'm here sitting like, why are you gambling on her life? Doesn't make sense. This dude, Edward, has no self-control whatsoever, at least not as much as Carlisle has, and they want him to suck on his girlfriend's open wound.
Please save her life. See, now I think you're just telling me what I want to hear.
At this point, Collins want her dead. Edward is not sure. At first, kinda scared he would suck her dry in the process, but finally he does it, and Bella faints after begging him to stay with her. Stay, Edward, stay with me. I will. His voice was strained. You liar. Meanwhile, all the fun, the offing of James, the stuff we actually want to see and be here for, is happening in the background, and we have no idea what's going on because Bella is too focused on Eddie. Chapter 24. And Bella wakes up in the hospital. Bella's whole family is there and the Collins are like hanging around. Apparently, they made up some story about Bella falling from the stairs. You fell down 2 flights of stairs and through a window. He paused. You have to admit, it could happen. No, it couldn't. How often does someone fall from the stairs and through the window? Also, Charlie is a cop. How is he not suspicious of any of this is beyond my understanding. It sounds exactly like a domestic abuse. Not really. Elise had a little bit too much fun fabricating evidence. It's all been taken care of very convincingly. You could probably sue the hotel if you wanted to. No, I don't. I don't want it to happen in the first place. Renee is trying to convince Bella to leave Forks, which I bet makes sense in her head. What are you talking about? I'm not going to Florida. I live in Forks. But you don't have to anymore, silly. Phil will be able to be around so much more now. We've talked about it a lot, and what I'm going to do is trade off on the away games. Half the time with you, half the time with him. I know Renee is a terrible mom, but to anyone, this whole situation with Bella must look at least a bit suspicious. Mom, I hesitated, wondering how best to be diplomatic about this. I want to live in Forks. I'm already settled in at school and I have a couple of girlfriends. No, you don't, you liar. And Charlie needs me. He was fine without you there. He lived. How is Renee eating all of this? It's all lies, and I thought that Bella wasn't a very convincing liar. But in the end, Renee leaves, letting Bella stay in Forks. I'm surprised. I thought Florida and your mother, well, I thought that's what you would want. But you'd be stuck inside all day in Florida. You'd only be able to come out at night, just like a real vampire. He almost smiled, but not quite. His mood swings are killing me. I would stay in Forks, Bella, or somewhere like it, he explained. Some place where I couldn't hurt you anymore. Of course, this whole conversation made Bella panic and hyperventilate, because what else? Don't leave me, I begged in a broken voice. I won't, he promised. Broken Promises, that should be the title of the next book. Now relax before I call the nurse back to sedate you. What the fuck? This girl is clearly addicted. She has a panic attack at the mere thought that he's gonna leave her, and he wants to sedate her. Unbelievable. Finally, epilogue. We almost made it. Let's go. Bella gets tricked into going to prom with Edward, and they have some questionable interactions. But before they get there, Tyler shows up at Bella's home, and it's hilarious, I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry if there's been some kind of miscommunication, but Bella is unavailable tonight. Edward's tone changed, and the threat in his voice was suddenly much more evident as he continued. Sir, why are you threatening a 17-year-old boy? To be perfectly honest, she'll be unavailable every night as far as anyone beside myself is concerned. No offense, and I'm sorry about your evening. He didn't sound sorry at all. I bet he's not. I bet he's enjoying it. Also, the fact that Tyler was still hoping to take Bella to prom is so adorable, actually. But yeah, at first Bella is pissed because she's not like the other girls and she doesn't want to go to prom, she doesn't want to dance. Edward somehow convinces her, or should I say he manipulates her into behaving nicely. He wasn't expecting the first of my reaction, that was clear. Pressed his lips together and his eyes narrowed. Don't be difficult, Bella. Oh yes, there's nothing better than Edward Cullen opening his mouth. Bella starts to cry a few moments later. This is completely ridiculous. Why are you crying? He demanded in frustration. Because I'm mad. Bella. He turned the full force of his scorching golden eyes to me. He's doing it again, and he knows what he's doing. What? I muttered, distracted. She's already distracted. She just looked into his eyes. Humor me. She has no obligation to humor you, you sick asshole. I swear to God, this is making me so furious. It's not even funny. And then it gets even better when Bella tells us herself this. I sat stubbornly in my seat. The lot was crowded with people in formal dresses. Witnesses. He couldn't remove me forcibly from the car as he might have if we'd been alone. She is aware that he would use force to remove her from this car. And yet she continues to date this guy. What is this shit? I just noticed that I started to use progressively more cursing as this video goes on. Luckily, at least Jasper is here to humor me. Do you want me to bolt the doors so you can massacre the unsuspecting townsfolk? And where do you fit in this scheme? He glared. Oh, I'm with the vampires, of course. Few pages in, and Bella suddenly realizes her whole tantrum was not necessary. She's actually enjoying herself because Edward's with her. I was surprised to realize that I was actually enjoying myself a little. I love the sentences when Stephanie Meyer uses like the 3 dots and drops a word after this. Jacob shows up, but it's not the Jacob we know. He's insanely tall now, super skinny, and that's not how a 15-year-old should look like, apparently. Jake talks to Bella for a second and tells her that Billy wants her to break up with Edward. Apparently, this is worth $20. Can you believe my dad paid me $20 to come to your prom? He admitted, slightly ashamed. Yes, I can, I muttered. Well, I hope you're enjoying yourself at least. Seen anything you like? She is still aware that he has a crush on her, and she's just teasing him about that. Then he's like, oh, my dad also said that he wants you to know that they will be watching, and leaves. Understandably, Bella is like, what the fuck? But then Edward is all over her, so she just forgets all about this. She tries to convince Edward to turn her because she loves him, but he kind of doesn't want her to become the soulless monster, and that's how the book ends. We're finally finished with Twilight. Let me know if you want to read New Moon with me. Leave a like and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in the next one.